Cave Canem. I'm one of the proprietors of the Norwich Bookstore, and it is my absolute honor. On behalf of all of us at the store, it is my absolute honor and joy to welcome you all here this evening. Thank you for spending your Tuesday night with us, and we're so excited to have you all here. Before we get started, I have just a couple of announcements to make tonight. The first one is a simple housekeeping announcement. If I can ask you to turn off your cell phones, your pagers, electronic devices that might make noise, go ahead and stow those, turn them off this time. If you've got a musical instrument now, is the time to put that away for the duration of the events. Afterwards, all bets are off. You're all good. While you're doing so, I want to bring your attention to a couple of things. One is, tonight we have Jam filming at the back of the room here. Some of you may know Jam as, from its previous incarnation, as CATV. They're our community access television station. They are also so much more. If you haven't checked out Jam recently, I highly encourage you to do so. You can check them out, jamuv.org is their website, or you can go down to White River Junction and check out their storefront they're on South Main in the Newbury Market. Not only are they filming author events and school board meetings and all the important things that we need for access to information, they are also doing things like teaching kids how to make films and offering podcasting capabilities to our community and a bunch of other really cool stuff. So do check them out, and we thank you for being here and helping to record this event tonight. Also want to give a big thank you to the community at the Norwich Congregational Church, and especially to Jonathan and Patty for helping us out, furnishing us with this beautiful space tonight, and for all that they do for the community. Thank you, Norwich Congregational Church. And my last announcement is about books. Books are kind of what we do here at the Norwich Bookstore, right? Even when we are off-site in a different building. Books are still what keeps us going. They're our stock and trade. They're what gets me out of bed in the morning. They make our whole world go round. And tonight, as every night, we're here to celebrate books, and specifically the works of Ross Gay. And this brand new book, The Book of More Delights. Many of you have already picked up your copies. If not, there's a big old stack of them at the back of the room. And please do consider going back and checking out what we've got back there tonight. Not only do we have this new book, we have Ross's previous essay collections and many of his award-winning poetry collections. And I know there are a lot of poets and poetry fans out in the audience, so if you need to stock up, please do see us, and we'd be happy to help you out there. Your book purchase is what allows events like this to happen. It's what allows many of them to be free and open to the public, and it's also what allows authors to keep traveling and keep working, and you get a great book out of the deal, so everyone wins. And we think it's added incentive because there are a lot of you here tonight. We're going to keep the signing line as efficient as possible. So the first group that we call into the signing line will be those who have the Book of More Delights in their hands. If you don't have the Book of More Delights and you'd like to get a different book signed and don't want this book, that is okay. You will still get your book signed. We'll just ask that you wait for that first group to pass the line. We're doing that to just make sure that everything moves quickly tonight. And if you want to get into that first line, you won't be disappointed with this book. And Ross will be happy to sign and personalize copies of his books this evening. So don't be shy. Grab your favorites, grab something new, and we'll see you in the sign line. So what we're going to do tonight, we're going to Ross will speak and present. We'll do a little bit of Q&A, and then we will do a signing line. We're going to ask, in addition to what I just mentioned about the first group in the line having this book, we're going to ask that no posed photo requests. We're not doing posed photos in the line at all. You are welcome to take photos tonight during the event, but not during the signing. And again, we're just trying to keep that line moving quickly so that everybody gets their moment. And we thank you so much for helping us to do that. And now, without further ado, it is my absolute delight to welcome Ross Gay here tonight. Many of you have been massive fans of Ross for a long time. I remember the first time I encountered his work was before the Book of Delights came out, and he was doing the tour of all of the book-selling conventions, and he came to the one that I attended at the time, and he read the essay that I think is now famously just referred to as the tomato essay. And an entire group of booksellers, a whole big room, was just like, oh, we can go home now. This is the book. And since then, I've had a couple of chances to come into Ross's orbit, and I'll just really quickly tell you about one of them because I think it really speaks not only to his incredible writing, but to his generosity of time and energy. And that is that when I came from Seattle, and when we were in Seattle in, this was like maybe April 10th of 2020, and we could not do anything. We couldn't even go into our bookstores. We were trying to do something to celebrate Independent Bookstore Day, which happens every year in April, and we couldn't think of what to do because we couldn't gather and we couldn't connect. We didn't really know how to use Zoom yet. We were still trying to figure it out. And I wrote to Ross Gabe's publisher and I said, hey, do you think that Ross could just send us a video or something, maybe read one of these essays or a poem? His work means so much to so many people, and I know he's such a busy guy, and this would be a big ask, but it would be really, really cool. And not only did Ross say, yes, I'll send you a video, he in fact did one better. He joined us for our first ever Zoom author event. We didn't even know how to do this. I remember scrambling to figure out how to get more people into this Zoom room. He pulled up local poets, up-and-coming poets in Seattle to read with us. And he brought this group together at a time when people were seeking togetherness and did not have an outlet for it. And I will never forget that. So thank you, Ross. And thank you for being here tonight, bringing us together once again. Ross Gabe is the New York Times bestselling author of the essay collections, The Book of Delights, and Inciting Joy, and 4 books of poetry. His catalog of Unabashed Gratitude, which you do have copies of at the back of the room, won the National Book Critics Circle Award and the Kingsley Tufts Poetry Award. It was a finalist for the National Book Award. And Beholding, which you can also find in the back, won the 2021 PEN America Gene Stein Award. He is a founding board member of the Bloomington Community Orchard, which is a nonprofit, free fruit for all food justice and joy project. And he's received fellowships from, among many others, the Loaf Writers Conference, the Guggenheim Foundation, and more. He teaches at Indiana University. His brand new book is The Book of More Delights. Please join me in giving a warm Upper Valley welcome to Ross Gabe.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Good to be with you all. How are you? Good. Good. This feels good. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me. We popped by the Norwich Bookstore, I think, this summer, and it's such a sweet, beautiful bookstore. I'm sure you all know that. But I think that was the first time I came to it. And anyway, I want to read a quick little bookstore essay. But first I want to say I'm here with some friends, our friends Jeff Friedman and Colleen Randall. And Jeff is, as I learn about my own work, I learn about how many people have sort of made it possible, or how many people I'm just copying. And I realized, like, with Jeff, it was, Jeff writes he's a beautiful poet, and he's also a beautiful prose poet, and kind of fabulous, short sort of fabulous, poem, story, essays, what you might call them. And it was after Jeff started writing those pieces, I recently realized this, that I started writing these short little essays, So anyway, I just want to sort of say that publicly, how grateful I am to you for showing me many things, This is called Friends, Let Us Do Our Best Not to Leave This Life Having Not Loved What We Love Enough. And thanks for that introduction. That was beautiful. I learned today from Dave that Joseph Fox Bookshop has gone out of business. I hope it wasn't the pandemic, by which is really meant the lockdown policies that made the rich richer and kicked the shit out of most everyone else. I just looked it up. It was. Anyway, there is a cliche circulating these days like genital warts, meant to suggest something was jarring or upsetting or super heart-stirring or something. I assure you someone is saying it at this very moment. I hate that I, too, am about to say it, but the news that Joseph Fox had closed felt like a gut punch. When Dave said it, I actually put my hand on my tummy and said, ugh, and no, and why? To which Dave shrugged and made a sad and sympathetic face. He loved the store too. Joseph Fox was a beautifully curated bookstore, for my taste, which needn't be yours. Lots of essays and nonfiction, lots of poems and novels, and nearly whole runs of certain presses stuff. I think a bunch of the New York Review books, that whole Melville House Last Interview series I remember seeing, probably some of those petite Penguin classics, and a bunch of the stout Archipelago bricks, books with which to make a house that won't blow down. They had a gardening section where I once got a seed-saving book, and an art section where I got a book of Annie Alber's work. It was small, the back room was very close to the front room, and the hallway between them was often packed, encouraging lots of excuse me's and after you's and such, which are themselves among the products, the gifts of the small bookstore. We put those after you's and such, those let me grab it for yous and such, in the satchels of our hearts. Though it was a little place, a packed little place, I meandered, I got lost, I got found, I got lost again. I guarantee you there were nooks I had not yet discovered. Nota bene, a good bookstore is also a nook store. A store of nooks, inside of which await what you cannot begin to know. Also, and crucially and delightfully, a staff that could answer the hell out of your questions, which I will go ahead and declare a quality, a bounty, a beauty of the small independent bookstore. People who know their shit and are glad to share it. The last time I was in there, I was looking for W.E.B. Du Bois's Black Reconstruction, a book I wish I had read when it was assigned to me in college. Lots of those books. No regrets, no regrets. When I asked, the 20-something woman working behind the counter hopped off her stool and walked directly to the floor-to-ceiling shelf across the way and pulled the Du Bois from the shelf, placing the tome in, it's not too much to say, my life, in my hands. Again and again they do, these booksellers, these guides, these friends, smiling. Here it is. Thank you. And I'm going to read the first 4 of this book because they all take place in Vermont. This is called My Birthday Again. So for those of you who have read the first book of Delights, so for those of you who don't know this book or the previous book, it's just a book of essays in which every day for a year, I write about something that delights me. That's the premise of the book. I have these little constraints, write them by hand, write them quickly, and write them daily. And in this book, there's quite a bit of like calling back to some of the other essays. So the first and last essay of that first book are called My Birthday, something like that. And this one's called My Birthday Again. Well, here we are again. This time, my 47th birthday. This year, we decided to enjoy a week away up in a little rented cabin in Vermont, which has a bounty of delights. The first of which is that apple trees grow everywhere here. Yards, roadside thickets, parking lots, and this year they are loaded. I mean, I have never seen forageable bounty quite like this. And it makes me want to come back with a pickup truck to snag a few years' worth of applesauce. As we were driving around, admiring all the apple trees, I was also admiring that very Vermonty and Catholic-sounding roadside feature called the pullout. I'm glad you got it. Also called pull-offs, they are common here as air. Room enough for a few cars to pull over and look down at the beautiful river roiling through the boulders below, or overlook the valley with the first embers of fall in the leaves. Shortly after we pulled out of a pull-off, we pulled into yet another of the delights of Vermont, a roadside farm stand. This one peopled by people, though sometimes they're peopled solely by a box in which to slide your money. A trust box I've never heard it called, though we should. As we were getting some blueberries and raspberries, we overheard some Vermonters who were happily whooped from summiting a pass earlier today. They described it while picking out their fruit, Beautiful this and beautiful that, challenging but fun. So we got directions from them, and after we settled up, we headed there. The trail started right at the edge of the parking lot, which was more like a pull-off, and we entered what was immediately a lush and magical forest. Birches with their bark curling like pages of old books, ferns luminous from the light dappling through the canopy, plush carpets of moss, nearly fluorescent mushrooms. It was ruggedish, lots of scrambling up slick slabs of, I think, granite. We were both sweating pretty good within the first half hour or so, and Stephanie stashed her sweatshirt behind a fallen tree. We passed through what felt like several ecosystems, and when, about 2 hours later, we finally approached a sign that we knew in our heart of hearts was going to tell us 100 feet, maybe 50, to the summit, it said 1 mile to go. We'd only eaten a couple handfuls of berries. I'd only brought a not all the way full quart glass jar of water for both of us. And as we were contemplating reaching the top, a couple hikers approached the same sign we were looking at. They both had on big packs. One looked to be about mid-60s, the other late 20s or early 30s. We learned they worked together and were practicing for a longer trip on the Appalachian Trail, with which this trail intersected. The older of the two was the boss. She had hiking poles, and the younger looked a little bit coerced. The boss asked us which way we were going, and we told her that we were deciding whether or not to go the final mile, pointing in the direction of the summit. Upon which she looked us up and down, noting, I guess, our attire, t-shirts and shorts, and asked us, or maybe actually she was telling us, "You know cotton's a killer, right?" Then pointing to our feet, unsupportive sneakers, she made an "are you kidding me" face and shook her head no. Then she asked how much water we had, and I shook the half-quart glass jar, cutely, I thought, at which she sneered, "That's not even close to enough," making an "are you stupid" face, and then she yelled, "and no glass on the trail." I was already backing away, trying to sneak down the trail, for who wants to get chewed out on their birthday? When Stephanie, for some reason, blabbed about, "Yeah, I am a little hungry, and yeah, I have a little bit of a headache too, and yeah, my knee's kind of bothering me also, blah, blah, blah." At which I recoiled and ducked my head like, why would you tell her that? Like she's gonna yell at me, which in a Vermonter way she did. In full-on, take your head out of your ass ease, she actually asked, "What's wrong with you?" After we told her everything is wrong with us, "You're right, thank you so much, and no more glass on the trail, sorry about that, ma'am," she said, sort of chipper again, "Okay, take care now, enjoy Vermont." As we were descending, we could hear her talking shit about us to the ranger a few yards farther up the trail. She was hungry. He had a glass jar. They were wearing cotton. Trotting down, enjoying myself, trying not to smoke Stephanie and her hurting knee too bad, I found myself whistling and feeling the soft earth receiving my inadequate footwear, and the glowing ferns dragging their feathery fronds along my suicidal cotton shorts. And I noted how pleased I was, delighted even, as I tend often to be, at having not reached the summit. To have gotten close, but no cigar. An interesting quality I was turning over in my head on my glad descent. Maybe I'm afraid of failure. Maybe I'm afraid of the ends of things. Maybe it's a rejection of the conquering spirit of some of my forefathers. Maybe it's a distant cousin to the way I, for some reason, always leave out a tiny bit of a few ingredients when I'm cooking. A few slices of onion, a couple small potatoes, 3 florets of broccoli or cauliflower. Maybe it's a small and weird gesture of hope, leaving something in the tank for tomorrow, which implies there will be a tomorrow. Maybe not finishing is a prayer for the tomorrow. An interesting prayer to make on the first day of a year-long project. Though it was a dueling prayer I made when Stephanie brought home 4 very delicious birthday tacos for me, which, along with the chips and guac and the kimchi and the roasted sweet potatoes and the kombucha, I did in fact summit. This is called Jeff Being Jeff. We visited our friends Jeff and Colleen today, taking a nice long walk together on a rail-to-trail path a few towns over, before Stephanie and I picked up some Nepalese food to take back to the house. After we'd unpacked the food and carefully dished it up, sitting at the table on their porch overlooking the ravine, Jeff asked if anyone had been fired as fast as he had. Though Colleen and I had both quit jobs on our first days, and we'd all been fired, Jeff took the cake, as he knew he would, by telling us he was canned after a couple of hours working in a bakery in Los Angeles because he couldn't stop sneezing, often in the flour, which he explained is why every Angelino born after that day has a little bit of his DNA. Popular bakery, I guess. On his way out, he asked the boss if he could at least have a free bag of cookies, chocolate chip walnut preferably. Sadly, he was rebuffed. Because Jeff was on a roll talking about his numerous shitty jobs, all of which are the source of numerous good stories, he told us about his year or so stacking pipe on an assembly line at Minneapolis Welding Rod during his 20s. Jeff being Jeff, he quickly learned the geriatric machine was finicky and prone to jamming. A quick study and hard worker in the admirable pursuit of laziness, dude actually taught a poetry class in which the students were instructed during class to take a nap. He figured out that the machine could be encouraged to jam by feeding a pipe the slightest bit wrong, or right, depending on your perspective, which would make the machine screech to a halt. When the engineers would bring their toolboxes to fix the jam, Jeff would hem and haw, "This damn machine," and such, "goddamn this piece of shit," and such, before finding a quiet corner where he could stretch out, pull out his paperback, and I guarantee you sometimes take a little nap. And this one is called Communal Walking Stick. Today in Vermont, meandering without purpose or GPS or map, headed nowhere and on no clock and anticipating nothing, getting lost, I guess I'm saying. To an extent, we were in a car with a mostly full tank, which always makes me think of Rebecca Solnit's book, A Field Guide to Getting Lost. Somewhere at the top of my list of most important books, evidenced not only by how many times I've read it, but by how many copies I've had and, well, lost. In our lostness, Stephanie and I are in the, God willing, middle of our lives, so let me invoke a little Dante, too. Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a forest dark, for the straightforward path had been lost. A little grandiose, but still kind of true. And we saw a little sign tucked into the branches of a tree like an owl, pointing in the direction of a town woods. First of all, nice concept, a town woods. Second of all, we followed the sign as far as the road took us, dead ending in a pull-offish parking lot, at which point, just ahead of us, the woods of Forest Dark began. There was a meandering trail, a chatty stream cascading periodically over waterfalls that seemed almost to cut terraces into the land, more birches, this time some more maples, and ferns again growing from all the fragrant leaf litter and moss turning into soil on the boulders. After a couple hours of wandering and lots of meandering, not quite lost, but neither were we found, we headed back to the car, thanking the woods as we left, which took the form mostly of running our hands along most everything we could reach. Stephanie wanted a few minutes alone by the side of the creek, so I kept following the trail back to the parking lot, at the beginning of which, leaning against a birch tree, was a perfect walking stick. I picked it up, sturdy, straight enough, not too heavy, a good height, I bet, for most people. And lying at that stick's feet, I saw a few others, a little stouter or crookeder, not quite as perfect, though perfect's a dumb idea, don't you think? I had stumbled upon a way station for walking sticks, or better yet, a walking stick lending library. Oh, this is a thing, I realized. This is something we do. This is called Braces on Adults. A couple co-eds were walking in my direction on campus today. It would be so funny. I don't know. I just feel like it's going to happen. I don't want to knock the cross off. I mean, that's what I'm doing. It seems like might happen. Yeah, I broke it.
The last time we found this missing was in a snowdrift at the school playground.
The last time you found it was in a snowdrift?
School playground.
At the school playground. All right. It's hardy. It's hardy. This is called Braces on Adults. A couple co-eds were walking in my direction on campus today, chatting and smiling. And at some point, they started laughing hard, kind of leaning into one another. And as they got close to me and then passed, I noticed that one of them had braces on his teeth, which in anyone not a child makes me a puddle. There was something so dear about this adult endeavor toward what? A better smile, less dental pain, greater jaw health, enunciatory support, that for whatever reason, lack of access, lack of diagnosis, lack of time, lack of concern, is not endeavored toward until adulthood. I have a friend my age who is always fiddling around with the rubber bands in his mouth. He has some sort of midlife orthodontics happening, and if he eats, he takes them out without saying so, the way some people surreptitiously down a few pills at meals without saying so, the way I used to hit my inhaler once or twice a day, even on good days, until I got off dairy. When the frailty of the adult human animal becomes, for whatever reason, evident, perhaps especially the adult human male animal, whose frailty is for that creature often a source of shame, it can almost make me cry. I guess the braces is that on steroids, because piled atop the frailty, crooked teeth, is this other thing boys sometimes want too, which is to be cute. My buddy Don, before he was murdered, told me he was excited about having at last a steady and secure job with insurance, perhaps for the rest of his life. Quick one. For whomever thinks of tenure as an obscene privilege, I would like to blow your mind with this alternative perspective. What if we all had tenure and 3 months off and parental leave and a library and comfortable chairs at the job site? In part because he wanted to get his teeth fixed, because, like so many people, he probably spent years uninsured, and he definitely spent years dentally uninsured. He smiled when he said it, pulling his bottom lip down to show me his crooked teeth. It was very cute. Unlike this kid on campus, unlike my buddy fiddling with his rubber bands at lunch, unlike dear Don in some parallel life I sometimes imagine for him, alive and down the block and coming over unannounced for dinner and with braces on those lower teeth, I never had braces, never needed them, for my teeth came out, or came in, I guess, pretty straight, though my mother chipped in too. By which I mean the time I was swinging too high, I was always swinging too high, on the shopping cart corral at Sears Surplus down off Roosevelt Boulevard while my mother was inside shopping, which was the bane of my existence. And because I became the bane of hers when I was dragged along, she'd be more than happy if we would play outside in the parking lot. Good and sane parenting for which she might now be arrested or put on a list. She also left us in the car when we were little sometimes to grab some milk, and it's like a miracle or something. We survived. Anyway, as I was having a good time swinging, my feet went a tad too high, my arms couldn't hold, and I fell face first onto the cement sidewalk below. Maddie, my brother, swinging too, albeit less rambunctiously, my brother was always the albeit less rambunctious one, walked me into the store, blood pouring from my face, which I barely noticed because I couldn't see through all the stars. My mother barked at Maddie to get him out of here, he's gonna bleed on all the clothes. we weren't flush like that. It's why we were at the surplus. Which he did, guided me by my elbow back to near the scene of the crime, where our mother met us, as usual, a little bit pissed off. She really never got a minute. But she quickly saw my face was caved in, and she softened, taking my hand and walking me over to the Dunkin' Donuts across the parking lot, where she escorted me and my bloody, caved-in face through the store to the women's bathroom in the back and got to work. But in order to get in there, because my lower teeth had gone through my lower lip and were stuck like that, she had to remove my teeth, which luckily were still intact, from my lip, or my lip from my teeth, or something gross, whatever it was. Once she got that out of the way, she looked into my mouth, made a quick call. My mother grew up on a farm, and it's to that tutelage that I attribute this facility. She won states in Minnesota for killing, dressing, and preparing a chicken in 1958. She reached into my mouth, felt that my lower teeth had all been shoved back quite a ways, and proceeded with her first two fingers to drag those teeth, which sounded to me like an earth mover changing the landscape, back into place. She pulled, you're not enjoying this. This isn't a delight for you. She pulled my bloody, punctured lip down to check her work, which smarted, tugged a little here, shoved a little there, squinted the one eye, wet a paper towel in the sink and wiped my face and said, "Come on, let's go." And then she grabbed a dozen munchkins on the way out. You know, my mom, she reads my stuff, and I read my stuff to her. And she's always a little bit nervous when she's going to be in an essay. But I read that one to her, and she was like, "I think you might have embellished a little." The embellishment is that she didn't have to kill the chicken. She just, in 1958, when she won states. She did all the rest. All the rest is true. This is called Paper Menus and Cash. Dave and I got together for breakfast today at the Owlery, the vegetarian place in town with owls for a theme. I don't know about you, but when restaurants or people have themes, I'm always like, what's up with the owls? I don't mean disparagingly or dismissively, what's up with the owls. I mean with curiosity. I mean, was it a book? Was it a dream? Was it a dead favorite uncle who loved or looked like or was an owl? Or maybe it's more like style, the trappings of style, something you try out or do until it starts to do you. And if you're James Harden, whose nickname is now The Beard, you're sometimes like, damn, I wish I could shave this beard. Or if you're my friend Rachel, who only wears orange Converse, your heart breaks a little bit at the beautiful purple pear on the rack you know you won't be getting. Or if you're the Owl's restaurant and someone brings you a beautiful velvet bald eagle teddy bird, you say, "Oh, thank you," and then tearfully toss it in the trash out back. Or if you're me and you like to wear rubber bands, yes, wear, it's fashion inherited from my father. There's a story or two. Enough that you walk the earth half scanning for rubber bands, periodically endowing them with a magical salvational quality, i.e., this is the rubber band that will keep the airplane in the sky, i.e., this is the rubber band, middle of a busy street, that is going to keep the baby safe, which is to say, style can tip into pathology, so heads up for that. The masked server asked us if we could use the QR code or if we would need a paper menu. I hate to tell you, by which I really mean it delights me to tell you, that though I submit to more nefarious shit every second of every day, I will not submit to that. And as much as the telling you is a delight, the not submitting, the refusal is way more. The refusal is joy. The refusal is among the offenses of joy. Though Dave was in the streets about the collaboration between the CIA and the Contras, which allowed cocaine to flood American cities in order to fund the anti-socialist forces in the early 80s, he also doesn't want to dwell on the miseries. Dave has kids who are the inheritors of this. I get it. It's one of the nice things about hanging out with him. Also, and maybe more to the point here, Dave is so old school, he didn't really know what a QR code was. And so he was a little baffled at the exchange, which I explained to him by showing him the little evil square, telling him not to look directly into it, then pointed to his phone, and then saying a bunch of stuff I guarantee you he stopped listening to before I got through it. In the event that you haven't stopped listening, first, thank you. Truly. And second, cash. Remember cash? Though there is no lament long or deep enough for the potential evils embedded in the abstraction of the earth and labor, which maybe cash is, it's way cooler than the mandatory chip, i.e. digital modes of payment, which seems to be part of the general monitoring and surveillance regime we somehow almost overnight, it seems, got cool with. Oh dear Lord, someone just explained to me that it's now possible to use your palm to pay for stuff. Lest I go full-on apocalyptic, which I am wont sometimes to do, and which I have no doubt palm pay is evidence of, let me remind us of two of the zillion alternatives. One, seeds. Two, the high five. Not to mention, quiet as it's kept, not everyone has a bank account or a card, and it seems to me those people ought to be able to get a coffee too. I'm a dinosaur, I know. The thing about paper menus is that they are most often kind of plastic, hardly laminated, but not this one. This one was printed on an elegant leaf of thick paper and was quite unused. These days being these days. These days being these days, you can forget that part of the pleasure of the paper menu, laminated or not, is running your finger along its offerings, stopping at what sounds delicious and tapping it as a way of saying, ooh, I might get this, to who you're with, who might do the same, which you might then do to the server, who might bend just slightly to consider what you're considering, to listen to you and help you. And when you're done ordering with a paper menu, and in this way it's like cash, you get to place it with your actual precious hands, if you have them, back into your server's actual precious hands, which you might also do while making eye contact and smiling and saying thank you, all of which we did. I'm going to do a few more. This one's called Hugging in the Co-op. This will. You all have co-ops up here, don't you? I know. I'm probably what you'd call a game or even enthusiastic hugger. And so the year or so long prohibition on the act, like for those of us who went along with those recommendations, bummer. A bit of angelic, defiant punk rock graffiti that arrived in our neighborhood sometime in spring of 2020. Advice I was still too terrified to take, though I was glad to know it was out there. Hug your friends. I recall the first time I hugged someone not my partner in the interim. I guess not my partner or mother or a friend who was feeling suicidal for a little while, go figure, and showed up on our step in obvious and dire need of a hug, was in the co-op. And when we hugged, well, let's just say my body noticed it. And then a week or two later, during an official, though short-lived reprieve from the previous year or so long moratorium on hugging, before they realized not everyone was following orders and getting their shots, after which revelation the hugging had to slow down or be only among an in-group. It was kind of like pre-Loving versus Virginia that way. Hugging the wrong person would doom the race. And I saw another friend who seemed to have spent the previous year terrified, more frightened, or maybe differently frightened than I was. But she had recently been protected and purified, and so when she asked if I was hugging, I opened my arms and said, yep. And we two embraced, She leaned her face against my chest, and we melted into one another. Also outside the co-op. If I were to place pins on a map of my first post-moratorium hugs, most of them would be inside or just outside of the co-op, which, for me at least, recommends the place. Anyhow, the hug, yes, I guess that is one delight, or as many delights as there are hugs to give or receive, if you like hugs, which not everyone does. But since I do, the return of the hug for that brief spell, the reprieve from unhugging, was likewise a delight. And the next reprieve from unhugging, a delight as well. It is another example of the deprivation of the delight making the delight light harder. I mean, brighter. I suspect after the next prohibition on hugs and the lifting of the prohibition, the hugs will again be that much more delightful. Though I've made up my mind, I'm with that punk rock graffiti. I've been terrified out of touching who I love and who too wants to touch me for the last time. As William Carlos Williams almost says about poetry, which I'd say is also a kind of touch, we die miserably every day for lack of what is found there. Anyway, I was in the co-op picking up a few odds and ends for dinner. And a dude with longish hair and flip-flops and a relaxed manner came up to me and held out his arms as though to hug. And when I looked puzzled, like, I don't know if I know you, he reminded me he was the former principal of a school I've worked with, a great principal, who told me at least two things that really stuck. Children whose teachers believe they're going to graduate will graduate, and that he eats magic mushrooms every New Year. That's the principal I want. I went, yo, or hey, or something to express my happiness, which was genuine and deep, for a dude kind of changed my life. The shrooms thing less than the believing in kids thing. And then he said something like, I want to give you a good, meaningful hug, something like that. Hippie-ish, men's groupish, untoxic masculinity-ly. And he did. It was so meaningful. His head kind of tucked in my chest, his hands on my lower and upper back, a gapless torso to torso, several long breaths worth of hug, enough hug, in fact, that I thought, first, damn, that's a lot of hug. Remember, I'm not shy this way. And second, when he wasn't letting go, I thought, well, I guess this is what we're doing. And the avocados and onions and potatoes. I think I saw some shallots over there too. And I kind of dug in. I relaxed into it. Several more long breaths of hug, after which we had a brief but very eye-contacty conversation. Still 2/3, maybe 3/4 arm in arm. And I remembered why I love this dude. And I think I'll read this last thing. It's a poem. Actually, I want to read this little quote. This is a quote from this Inciting Joy book. It's an essay actually about poetry. But it's a moment where I'm talking about Auden's, a poem of Auden's. And it's a quote, this is from Arundhati Roy's book, Capitalism. She says, do we need weapons to fight wars? Or do we need wars to create a market for weapons? After all, the economies of Europe, the United States, and Israel depend hugely on their weapons industry. It's the one thing they haven't outsourced to China. And given as we are currently participating in the murder of the people in Palestine, this is called Prayer for My Unborn Niece or Nephew. Never stops. Today, November 28, 2005, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, I'm staring at my hands in the common pose of the hungry and penitent. I'm studying again the emptiness of my clasped hands, wherein I see my sister-in-law days from birthing the small thing that will erase, in some sense, the mystery of my father's departure. Their child will emerge with 10 fingers and toes, howling, and his mother will hold his gummy mouth to her breast, and the stars will hang above them, and not one bomb will be heard through that night. And my brother will stir, waking with his wife the first few days, and he will run his long fingers along the soft terrain of his child's skull, and not once will he cover the child's ears or throw the two to the ground and cover them from the blasts. And this child will gaze into a night that is black and quiet. She will pull herself up to her feet, standing like a buoy in wind-grooved waters, falling and rising again, never shaken by an explosion. And her grandmother will watch her stumble through a park or playground, will watch her sail through the air on swings, howling with joy, and never once will she snatch her from the swing and run for shelter because again the bombs are falling. The two will drink cocoa, the beautiful lines in my mother's face growing deeper as she smiles at the beautiful boy flipping the pages of a book with pictures of dinosaurs, and no bomb will blast glass into this child's face, leaving the one eye useless. No bomb will loosen the roof, crushing my mother while this child sees plaster and wood and blood where once his Nana sat. This child will not sit with his Nana killed by a bomb for hours. I will never drive across 2 states to help my brother bury my mother this way, to pray and weep and beg this child to speak again. She will go to school with other children, and some of them will have more food than others, and some will be the witnesses of great crimes, and some will describe flavors with colors, and some will have seizures, and some will read 2 grade levels ahead, but none of them will tip their desks and shield their faces, nor watch as their teacher falls out of her shoes, clinging to the nearest child, for the bombs are falling again. This child will bleed and cry and curse his living parents and slam doors and be hurt and hurt again, and she will feel clover on her bare feet, will swim in frigid waters, will climb trees and spy cardinal chicks blind and peeping, and no bomb will kill this child's parents. No bomb will kill this child's grandparents. No bomb will kill this child's uncles. And no bomb will kill this child, who will raise to his mouth some small morsel of food of which there is more, while bombs fall from the sky like dust brushed from the hands of a stupid God, and children whose parents named them will become dust, and their parents will drape themselves in black and dream of the tiny mouths which once reared to suckle or gasp at some bird sailing by, and their tears will make a mud which will heal nothing. And today I will speak no word except the name of that child whose absence makes the hands of her parents shiver, a name that had a meaning, as will yours. Thank you.